What's up, everybody? Cornhole Mish here, and we are here for another uh, awesome topic. So, the first week we talked about uh, the sort of the foundations of goal setting, what to do. Last week we talked about why we do that, why we want our goals. What is the big why behind it all, so that we stay motivated. And now it's time to talk about the habit changes, because it's one thing to say this is what I want. It's another thing to say, this is why I want it. But the most important part is, now what do you do with that? So you know what you want, you know why you want it, and we don't want to get super crazy and attached to our goals, but we don't want to sit around and do nothing either. So what do we do? What are the actual habit changes that need to happen? And also, let's just talk about habits, because there's so much mixed information about how to approach habit changes, right? 21 days, 30 days. How do we actually change our habits in a way that works? It is February 18th right now. If you had a New Year's resolution January 1st, where are you with it now? So, if you are having a hard time keeping up with your habit changes and resolutions, you're not alone, whether it's any time of the year. And it's because we don't approach our habit changes typically from a human perspective. So, my background is psychology, it's human behavior, and I approach habits in a way that I know supports humans. I think about the humanness in us, and then I create the steps to support those goals from the human perspective. We're not robots. We're not going to operate like robots. We have to understand how humans operate to be successful. So let's get into it. Instead of setting aggressive habits based on the person that we see ourselves at the end, right? So you have this vision of who you want to be. Maybe you see yourself as, super fit or successful financially, or having the relationship of your dreams, and you could see it, and you're setting that goal and you want it really badly. So you don't want to set your habits based on that person that's way over there, or maybe not way over there, but over there, not where you currently are. We actually, and this is going to maybe be different than what you've thought, we actually want to set the smallest possible goal to barely move us from where we currently are. And we do this because humans resist change. So we have to work with ourselves. We don't like change, it's the way that it is. And resistance will come up when our habits feel too much. Now, in the beginning, you'll have all this momentum and excitement and motivation, and it sort of blinds us to the reality of what we're willing to do long term. Because at first, we're like, no, I see that goal. I'm going to get that goal. I'm going to work out like 5 hours this week, and you can get all crazy with what you're willing to commit to. I don't care. I can not eat sugar for 6 months. That's no problem, because we're seeing ourselves as that person at the end that's like already there. And we're like, yeah, that person's killing it. That person can do all those things. But that person is not currently here. So the question is, what's the very first step to your new habit? Is it just simply putting on your workout clothes, right? And I'm going to go through details, so don't worry. Is it just breathing for 2 minutes? Is it just cooking one time a week? Like, if you are here and you want to be over here, then what's the first thing you can do that's closest to where you already are? You got it, Justin. Stay in the now. It is all about mindfulness. Okay, let's get into the details though. People often resist moving at the pace that their brain and body want to move, because they're so desperate to get to the end results as quickly as possible. I get it. I understand that vision of who you want to be is very alluring, and we want it right now. We don't want to wait. Forget delayed gratification. Give it to me now. I understand. I understand the pain of being where you are when you don't like where you are. I've been there many times in many different areas of my life, and I know the desperation that moves us to make decisions that are not based on the long game. But we have to play the long game, because otherwise you're going to be doing short term, short term, short term, short term, and unfortunately that is detrimental to the body and the brain. It in terms of health and wellness and weight, it creates a yo-yo effect of your weight, and it makes your metabolism slower. In terms of your brain, the more times you do something and don't get to the end, or do succeed and then go back, your brain creates actual pathways and neurons that say, oh, this is like a me problem. Like I can't succeed at this long term, or something's wrong with me. So we can't keep doing those same things over, and eventually we have to say, I gotta play the long game. Don't pick habit changes that suck. If it isn't something you want to do forever, don't choose it. We want habits that we actually want to keep for the rest of our lives. You have to be honest about that. Do you not want to eat sugar for the rest of your life? That's crazy. Now, you might eat too much sugar right now and it doesn't feel good, and there's some movement that can be had there, but no more sugar forever and ever? What? No. So we gotta be realistic. So let's get into the 5 simple tips for changing your habits. Number 1 is recognize your unconscious habits. Your unconscious habits. What are the habits we do unconsciously? If we lacked safety growing up, our body might orient towards fight. Therefore, defensiveness could be an automatic habit that we have. And we would do that to control and protect. And this could also look like perfectionism in hopes of feeling in control. That's an example of an unconscious habit, being defensive. Once again, going back to the human side of us, if we lacked safety growing up, then that makes sense that we would do that. So this is not about villainizing or demonizing or making ourselves wrong or bad. It's about understanding, like, wow, I have an unconscious habit of automatically being defensive. But if I think back to why I might behave that way, it does actually make sense. Let's get into some other ones. If we lacked stability growing up, our body might orient towards flight. So we could stay busy to stay in motion to avoid the emotions in the body. This could also look like type A personality, to avoid pausing and feeling. So your unconscious habit is to be busy all the time. And so I was saying you might not be aware. You won't be aware. You won't be aware you're doing it. That's the point of these. That's why we have to bring presence to it. Justin said Automatic Habits by James Clear is a really good book. Yeah, love that book. Totally back that. So yeah, we look at, okay, so maybe I do always want to be busy. Maybe I am always in motion, but that makes sense when I look back to why that might be happening. If we felt we couldn't escape danger growing up, our body might orient towards freeze, a retreat into numbness or hoping stillness would stop the pain, and this could be interpreted as laziness. So if you are someone that thinks you're lazy or you have a difficult time staying motivated and you have an unconscious habit of just kind of retreating, this makes sense, right? That's an unconscious habit that makes sense based on the experience that preceded it. If we learn to create safety and stability by editing ourselves to control others' emotions, we may find ourselves in the fawn state. This looks like people-pleasing and taking on too much responsibility. We're going to value other emotional states at the expense of our own. That's an unconscious habit, right? People-pleasing is a habit. So we look at these sort of overarching habits, we look to understand them, and it's going to help us with our daily habits. Can you understand why the things I just talked about, being in the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state, how that could get in the way of something like exercising every day, or meditating, or cooking your food, or making sales calls, whatever habits you're trying to change, moving up in your career, building relationships. Can you see how these deeper underlying habits could influence those, right? That's why we have to understand those first. But most people just jump to, well, I just got to exercise every day. And if I don't, I'm lazy. Or I just need to eat less. And if I don't, I'm out of control and have a willpower problem. No, there's so much more to the story. You're not alone, Justin. I am too. Your neediness could be your nervous system reaching for connection when it felt unattainable. You don't need too much. This all makes sense. Your procrastination could be a way to pause and hold back out of fear of failure or rejection. So that first step, notice your unconscious habits. I want you to really dig into understanding without judgment, why might I be behaving this way? What could this really be about? If I jump at people, jump down their throats with defensiveness, what is that about? Instead of saying, God, I gotta be nicer. It's like, that sounds really cool. Like, well, be nicer, sure. But there's a reason it's happening, and that's why we understand. Then we move into step 2, notice your automatic reactions. So the unconscious habits is the stuff that's kind of happening first, although you could say defensiveness would be a reaction, but we'll get more into it. Let's talk about your reactions. Before we get into that, we need to understand how the subconscious, and I use subconscious and unconscious interchangeably, so bear with me with that. But how does this all work? Because when we understand that and we understand the lens we're looking through, it's going to be easier to make habit changes. So if you're on Facebook, you're looking at a graphic. If you're on Instagram, you're looking at me and I will explain the graphic. So basically, information comes into our experience through our senses, right? Sight, hear, touch, smell, and taste. And when that information, so you're hearing my voice right now, that is a piece of information coming in. And then what's going to happen is your brain is taking in so much information, because right now I can hear my heater. I can hear, my dog making a sound in the other room. So, and that's just what I'm hearing. I'm also, there's all kinds of sensory information happening all at once, and the brain couldn't possibly digest it all. So what it does is it deletes, it distorts, and it generalizes so that it can actually not go crazy. So it's going to delete stuff that's unimportant. So if you have like a heater humming in the background, it's most likely going to delete that at some point so you don't even hear it, because it's like, I don't need that sensory information. It's not important to me. Get rid of it. I got to focus on what I'm doing over here. Or it distorts it, or it groups it. Like, oh, that's going to group into this. There's no need to get really detailed into that. And then it moves through all kinds of programming, memories, your values, your beliefs, your identities, and it creates an internal representation of what that is to you. And this is so important to understand, because the words I'm saying right now are not going to be heard or interpreted the same way to any people listening right now, because it goes through this process. So it's going to take the information in, and then through your own programming, decisions, beliefs, values, all that stuff, it's now going to interpret that information and create representation of what that means. Now, the state part of this is sort of less relevant to this, because I'm just sort of teaching content and you're not going to have too big of a reaction to it, I don't think. But let's take an example of playing cornhole, since that is a big part of my audience. So you have information happening, it's going through your brain, you create a representation of it. That all creates your state. There's nothing I talk about more than the importance of your state. Your state, the way that you feel, or the way that you're existing in that time at that moment. So in the cornhole example, when I watch people play, I notice the state change. And when I'm like, oh man, they have to change their state. Nothing about their game is going to get better until their state changes. That's true for everything. And your state is dictated by that sensory information coming in, going through all your programming and patterns, creating a representation of what that means to you, and then it creates an actual feeling or sensation in the body. That's then going to create behaviors. That's then going to create results. It's really important to understand how this all works as we go deeper into this. Most of that programming that's happening, that the sensory information goes, the filter we'll call it, so the filter that all that information comes through is typically programmed from the ages of 0 to 7. So everything that happened in the first part of your life created all the filters that all information now comes through. This is all going to make more sense as we go deeper into it. I'm sort of like setting foundational parts to get into the actual habit changing, so bear with me here. Step 3 is to seek understanding, or the why behind the habits and the reactions. So first, you have to understand your unconscious habits. Why do I do what I do? What am I actually even doing? That's unconscious. Like, am I doing things I don't even realize? Then you understand your reactions. Your reactions come through this filtering that is typically created from the age of 0 to 7, and it creates everything else. So information comes in, it's filtered, and then you respond. You respond in a way that makes sense to you and your programming only. It is specific to you. Now we want to know why. Oops. Go back. Bear with me here. My slides are, there we go. So why are we doing what we're doing? We talked about, if we go back to step 1, that if you were in a home when you had to have more fight response, you're going to respond defensively. Start to really pick apart your whys of your habits and your reactions. And I like to really relate this to the nervous system. If you joined me last week, we got really sort of deeper into the nervous system and the different states that it could be in. And I want you to really look at the why behind your habits and reactions, but from a super non-judgmental, compassionate place of like, this makes sense that I would do this. Why might I do this? What was I taught from the age of 0 to 7? What kind of filtering have I created that's making me respond this way? So compassion and understanding, why do I do what I do? Then move on to step 4. You're going to choose habits that address the why of your current patterns. This is step 5, by the way, is going to be actually like probably what you mostly start on, which is like, okay, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to exercise more. So how do I get myself to exercise more? That's step 5 of this process, okay? So first, before that, we had the 3 I just talked about and step 4, which is to choose habits that address the why. So the question we asked right before this, why might I do X, Y, Z? Now we create habits that address that. Thoughts drive consequences equals reactions and emotions. Right, Justin, you got it. Okay, let's look at some examples. We talked about the nervous system states last week. Let's do an example of something like not being motivated. So if you're not motivated and you really struggle to follow through with habits for any long period of time, you might be in a dorsal vagal or freeze state, which means you're retreating into numbness to still the pain from childhood or traumatic experiences, potentially. Or it could be a multitude of other reasons. For example, I went through 2 horrible business breakups in my lifetime. I promise you, after each of those business breakups, I was in freeze state. I'm sorry, not freeze state. I was in a complete dorsal vagal. I was completely in the fetal position in my room, unable to deal. And that was really just where I needed to be at that time. So instead of beating yourself up and calling yourself lazy, you could start each day with a lazy moment when you connect to yourself instead of escaping or numbing. So the very, very, very first step, if you were in this state, would not be to wake up and go for a run. That is too far from where you are. The very first step would be just to connect to your body. It might even be just to connect to the room. Because if it's too painful to be in your body or it's not safe to be in your body, then you could at least connect to the room. You could say, I notice my curtains. I notice this bike over here. I notice this green ball. I notice. So you're just bringing yourself into the room. And then the next step would be bringing yourself into your body. I notice my foot. I can feel my foot inside of my fuzzy slipper. It's soft and comfortable. I feel my sit bones on this chair. I feel the support. Like you start going through your sensations. If you're in the freeze state, I talked about this last week. That's when it's kind of that combo of like, I have all this anxious kind of energy stirring in me, but then I also need to like, and I want to get it out, but I also can't seem to move. How would you change that when you come from an abusive dad and was always on the defense? With a lot of love. I mean, great question. That goes back to sort of what we talked about in step 1. You have to have compassion and understanding for yourself and almost have 2 versions that you're sort of experiencing of yourself, where you're the adult you who would never do that to a child. And then you have the child you that is now having to have a relationship with the adult you now and say, that wasn't okay. And you're safe now. I'm here. I know this is both you, but that's sort of what needs to happen, because back then it wasn't safe. And back then you didn't have the adult that you needed, but you're an adult now, I'm assuming. So you get to now be that presence that you needed then. And reminding yourself that that is completely normal, that you would respond that way, and have just complete awareness of when it happens and understanding. If a child was having a tantrum because they had big emotions, and you're aware enough to know what that's really about, you would respond to that toddler a different way than if you didn't have awareness and you were just like, stop the screaming, I can't handle it. You would say, it looks like you're having a lot of big emotions right now. And that's kind of how you treat yourself. So you become defensive because that's the pattern that's been created and then the very obvious nervous system response. And then you attend to that. You go, that makes sense that you would behave that way. That really wasn't okay what happened to you. And let's take a few deep breaths, or you find different resources. Last week I went through all kinds of nervous system tools that you can use in those moments, but the first step is pausing and saying, it's okay that you're having the habit of responding this way. That makes sense. And let's choose something different. Let me know if that helps. Okay, so if you're doing all the things with no results, you might be in a sympathetic state. You may stay in constant motion to avoid feeling. I'm going to go ahead and put both hands up because this has always been the state that I've been in. I was always doing all the things. I did everything perfectly with no results all the time. When I wasn't losing weight, I was the best weight loss student. I mean, working out 4 hours a day, eating within my calories. Like, I followed everything as perfectly as you possibly could to get no results. In business, I would do everything my business coach told me in the deadlines or before. I followed every single step, every single rule, 0 results. Couldn't get a client to save my life. So I am very familiar with this state. Instead of forcing yourself to do more or work harder or hustle more, you could set your timer to connect to your body and feel into your body sensations. I promise you, back when I was in this state, this is the last thing I would have ever wanted to do. I would have wanted, nope, just got to get on more sales calls. Nope, just got to do an extra 5 miles. Like, I would have done all those things before I sat and just breathed and felt my body, because that would have been torture for me at that time, because I wanted to stay in constant motion. Nope, just got to do more. I'm just not working hard enough. I just haven't made enough pitches. I just need to do more social media. I convinced myself that doing more, that my problem was that I wasn't doing enough, because if I told myself I wasn't doing enough, then I could keep doing more, and then I fulfilled that need to be in constant motion. So it was a very dysfunctional state that I tricked myself into believing was good, because the rest of the world said it was. They're like, no, yeah, you're doing great. You're working out 4 hours a day. That's phenomenal. So I was able to convince myself that I was doing good. But the truth was, I was in this state. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so actually, let me go step back for a second. Come on. There we go. So those are a couple examples of ways you can address your habits from where you're at. So if you are, actually, I'm going to go back one more. If you are in that more of the dorsal, vagal, or freeze state where it's really difficult to get motivated, then you can start with some of, and actually a few slides from now, I'm going to give you specific things you could do. So I won't get too into it right now. When I was a pro in the PDC, I could have used this to change my state of mind then. Absolutely. I mean, you still can. I mean, this is not just about, being the best athlete you can be, although it would be very helpful there. This is everything in life, right? And these are tools that we're not taught as children. I mean, I'm trying to teach my 9-year-old these tools, but it's difficult. So we can't beat ourselves up for not already knowing this, but I hope that it helps now. Justin said, I think this should be a class that all pros and kids should have to go through, especially kids can really learn from what you teach. Oh, well, I appreciate that. And it's out there free, so anybody can watch it. Okay, let's go into step 5. Add in the simplest, easiest habits that could bring you closer to your goals. When we want change, we get floored with hope and excitement and positive feelings. And we think about all the changes we want. Oh my God, I'm going to make tons of money. I'm going to lose all the weight. I'm going to, have the best relationship in life. And I'm going to be honest. I love cheesy dating shows like The Bachelor and Love is Blind. And I think it's really funny to watch these people date. And it's like, they're creating this like the playing house sort of like vision, and it's like, you guys are being very unrealistic as to what marriage actually looks like. Like, you guys are talking about, ooh, I can't wait when we like sit down and have a movie night with our kids. I'm like, do you realize that's like this tiny 1% of what it's like to be a parent? So we do that. We create these beautiful visions, and we get so caught up in all the stuff that surrounds it, and we aren't honest with ourselves about everything that happens getting to there, when we're there. It's not all sunshines and roses and flowers, but that's what happens. It's very exciting. Now, what this does, because we've created this beautiful picture and vision of this great life that we want, And because we most likely aren't too excited about the life that we're currently in. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but for a lot of people, they're like, man, I really don't like where I'm at, and I really like that vision I just created, and it sounds really nice and a lot better than where I am. What this does is it creates urgency, and it makes us less logical. We want that dream life so bad that we start making decisions that don't actually serve us to get some of those feelings right now. We're like, I don't like this feeling that I have. I love that feeling that I created for the future. I'll do anything to get that feeling right now. I don't care what I do. This is when we see extreme things. I have a very strong opinion about Ozempic, and it's not because of Ozempic specifically. It's because I've been in the weight loss industry since 2006. Ozempic is just the next thing. I've watched them all come and go, and I understand. It is not a judgment. I completely understand why somebody does it. And I'm going to strongly urge people don't. And I have a lot of evidence and experience and education to back that up. And this is why people would reach for that in these moments. The destination that we set for ourselves is just to set up our journey. We cannot skip the journey. I just finished a course on helping kids become less entitled and teaching financial literacy to kids and stuff like that. And one of the things they said is that research shows that when kids and adults, because this happens with lottery winnings and inheritances and stuff like that, when kids get stuff for free, so to say, like without having to work for it, when that keeps happening over and over and over, it's actually a huge disservice because we as humans aren't supposed to get something for nothing. Like that goes against, it like messes with us. It's not how it's supposed to happen. It doesn't need to be torture. It doesn't need to be struggle and blood, sweat, and tears, but there's supposed to be energy inputted to receive. And so what I really learned about this is like when I just give my kid everything, then he's not working for it. A, that's what he expects, but B, he never learns to do something to get something, and that's actually messing with him psychologically. He might not know it, but it is. And that's proven when we study lottery winners and people who get huge inheritances. It messes with them. Yeah, we want the instant gratification, Justin. It's true. And I'm having to teach delayed gratification to my 9-year-old. And I don't want it either. I want everything right now too. I get it. But when we actually ask and look at the research of how this impacts humans, it's not positive at all. It just feels like it will be. So most people get discouraged at the obstacles on the journey to our destination. So like I said, we start off really motivated, we get really excited, we move towards something, we hit an obstacle, and then in the beginning we're like, no problem, it's an obstacle, and hop over and no big deal. But as it gets closer and closer, it becomes more difficult to get through those obstacles, or to assume that those obstacles are some kind of indication that we're going the wrong way or that we don't deserve it, or all that stuff. The other thing is they'll take steps forward and then turn back around because they can't see the end. It's too far away. They're like, I'm not seeing results. I don't like the pace this is happening. I can't deal with the state that I'm in right now anymore. I don't want this. I'm going to turn around and go back. That's usually not even a conscious thing, to be honest. The hardest part about the obstacles are the feelings that show up and the meaning we make out of the obstacle. The obstacle itself is actually not a problem. It's very normal. The problem is that obstacle creates feelings and meaning, right? I just kind of said it there. Like, oh no, I'm hitting a plateau. Or, okay, I'm going to use the weight example because it's the easiest one. So you're doing stuff, you're losing weight, boom, the scale stops moving. Now we have emotion. Oh my goodness, I thought I was doing really well. I must not be doing enough. I'm going to fail. This isn't going to work. All kinds of feeling and meaning. That means I suck. That means I'm weak. That means that I have to do more and I already feel exhausted, right? So the obstacle, the scale not moving is actually not a problem and very normal, but the feelings and the meaning that comes at that point is so overwhelming that it either causes us to stop or re-engage or potentially continue engaging in behaviors and habits that are absolutely never going to serve us. So we go more extreme or we stop altogether. I was always the more extreme girl. I'm not going to lie. We can't have what we want without stretching ourselves and growing. When we expect the obstacles and we feel we can handle them, we will always move forward. Obstacles are always going to happen. It is part of life. There's a book called The Upside of Stress, and what she talks about is that the only difference between being in that stressed state and crumbling or rising is one thought: I can handle this. So with the cornhole example, you're getting to the end of the game, or you're down points, whatever, and you're either going to rise and play the best you ever have, or you're going to choke. And the difference is knowing if you can handle it. I can handle this. If you say that and feel it, you will have no problems. You will have your best performance you've ever had. This is true with everything. I can handle it. If the scale doesn't move for a week, I can handle it. If I've got 75 no's in my sales calls, I can handle it, right? It's that belief in yourself and the expectation that there's going to be obstacles that is going to get you over the hump. If you don't believe you can handle an obstacle, then that will derail you. You will be completely thrown off. You'll have all kinds of feelings, all kinds of meaning, and the obstacle is just an obstacle. It is not, there is zero meaning or feeling with the obstacle. It is everything you create around it, and you have complete control over that. So I mentioned earlier that I was going to give you some tools that you can use to create habit changes based on where you're at. And I showed this slide, if you're on Facebook, I showed this slide last week as well. So if you are in the sympathetic state, you're in the constant motion, doing, go, 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 hustle, there are some things you can do based on whether you're in a lower energy state or a higher energy state. For example, if you are in actually, let me say this before. If you're in sympathetic state, what your body needs is to discharge energy. It has too much anxious energy stirring inside of you, and you need to get rid of it. So it's going to be a lot of movement-based things. However, if you're feeling very unmotivated, then the idea of going for a run is crazy, right? So we don't want to put that on ourselves because we'll never do it. So what we do is we do something smaller. It could be seated shaking. So it's just sitting here and shaking your hands, right? Shaking your arms. This is discharging energy, and you're not going to have much resistance to doing that. If you're sitting on the couch and you notice you're feeling the need to go and do and be in constant motion, and you feel that anxious energy kind of stirring inside of you, or if you're playing cornhole and you feel that anxious energy, shake it out, right? Just shake it out. You can use fidgets. You can get up and walk. You can go outside and move. And I'm moving across from lower energy movements to higher energy. You can dance. You can do yoga. You can stand and shake. You can jog. You can do spin class or cardio, things like that. You're getting out the energy. Think about movement as not a way to lose weight. It is maybe not even a way to be healthier at this point. You're using movement as a way to discharge sympathetic, fight or flight, anxious energy because it needs to get out of your body. If you're in dorsal vagal state, this is when you feel very unmotivated, like you're glued to the couch, and the last thing you want to do is move. But the only way to get to the state you need to be in to be easily applying your habit changes is to go through sympathetic. You need movement. You need to stir up energy. So this is going to sound really silly, so bear with me. But on the lowest energy state, when you feel the least motivated, imagine movement in your head. That's right. You're laying on the couch. You're like, I know I need to, I'm feeling really, collapsed and numb. So you just picture yourself walking. There you go. Step one. Yeah, it is very therapeutic. You're right, Adrian. You could go to a park. You don't even have to move. Just sit there. Just be around people and be outside. You could be in a rocking chair, right? So you're just rocking back and forth. You can move your limbs while lying. So you're just kind of moving around, not necessarily shaking, but just like moving around. You can tap, right? So you can tap your body, tap your arms, tap your neck, tap your chest. You're just starting to create some kind of energy because the sympathetic energy that I was talking about before discharging, you don't have it, right? So you got to get some of that energy. That's what gets motion going. You can do a standing meditation where you just stand up and focus on your breathing. You can sit to stand. Otherwise, just stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. You're just starting movement. You can go for a walk. You can march. So if you're someone that said, I have a habit change of working out every single morning. And the minute that alarm goes off, you're like, oh God, the last thing I want to do is move. You start on this lower energy movement scale, all the things I just went through, and you be gentle with yourself and to move yourself out of that state. We don't just force ourselves, because then we're not actually creating new foundation and new habits and new neural pathways. The force doesn't work long term. You're not going to force yourself forever. That's not a long-term strategy. We work with where we are. I don't feel like moving, but I know when I move, I feel better. So I'm going to start where I'm at. I'm going to imagine moving. I'm going to put on my workout clothes without putting pressure to work out. I'm going to rock in my rocking chair. I'm going to stretch in my bed. Start where you are and allow yourselves to naturally get to a place. You will get there. I promise you. When I first started exercising, let me say this differently. When I first started exercising in a healthy way, because I forced myself for many years in a very unhealthy way, I was so gentle with myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go and do a 10-minute yoga class in my office. I'm not even going to take my sweats off. I'm not going to put a sports bra on. I'm literally going to roll out of bed in my pajamas, mosey on into my office, throw on a 10-minute yoga video, and lie on the floor and do the least amount as possible. And let me tell you, it did not take long before I was like, I think I could do more. I think I'm actually going to put a sports bra on so that I could do more than just lie around. You get yourself there naturally by being where you are. It's always the path of least resistance. Here's some examples. For health and wellness, instead of exercising 60 minutes every day, start with putting on workout clothes or exercising 5 minutes per day. For career and finance, instead of post on social media every day, start with one creative and fun post per week. For social and relationships, instead of attend one social event every week, start out with reaching to people on the phone or online for connection. For spirituality and faith, instead of read through spiritual verses every day, start with 1 minute per day of deep breathing and connecting. Start where you are. I cannot stress the importance of this enough. I know that vision is dreamy. I know you want it. I know you want it now. But guess what? We're not there yet. And you cannot force or pretend that you are there. So we have to be where our feet are, as they say. So what will your new habits and patterns look like? What do you need more than anything right now? This is not typically the question we ask ourselves. We ask ourselves, what do I have to do to get to X? I've been in the weight loss industry since 2006. Let me tell you the question that I always would get asked. What do I need to do to lose weight? What do I need to do to get results like that person? What do I need to do to exercise more? What do I need to do to eat less? That is the wrong question. Your body responds when its needs are met. So yes, for some people, they eat too much food, and so they eat less food, and the body's like, thank you, that's what I needed. Some people are too sedentary. They add in movement and their body says, thank you, that is what I needed. But that is not always the starting place. That is not everybody's needs. Some people's needs is to get out of a toxic relationship. They lose weight from that. Some people's needs are speaking up for themselves and telling their boss what they need to say and demanding what they need, right? So your needs are more important than what anybody's path to get to success is. You have to meet your needs for your body to respond in a positive way if you want it to be long term. So the question is, what do I need more than anything right now? Because that could be rest, that could be movement, that could be telling somebody something that you don't want to. I mean, there's so many things that could be. You have about 5 seconds before the brain talks you out of a new pattern. So if you start negotiating with yourself, choose any habit that's different than what you're doing. So I'm going to go back to the bed example. Let's say you told yourself you're going to wake up and do X. I don't care what that X is, whatever it is. You wake up, you open your eyes, you're like, okay, I know I set this habit of X, but I'm really kind of tired. but my leg's been hurting. But, so this is negotiating, right? Well, I could do it later. If I move that meeting, right? You have 5 seconds before you talk yourself out of that new pattern. And you won't be happy you did it. Unless you're setting patterns and habits that you don't actually want. Then please don't do them. But assuming you're picking things that are meeting your needs and are actually what you want, then no negotiating. If I start negotiating, that's when I immediately stand up. Like, just stand up. I don't care. Do anything else. Go to the other room. And you might even be like, why am I standing in this room? It doesn't matter. Do it. Do anything other than just negotiating with yourself. Now, you don't have to follow through with what you set for yourself. There's been many times where I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and do the Peloton bike. And I wake up, I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm doing a Peloton bike right now. This is not going to happen. But I still get up, I walk to the office, and I go, well, what do I want to do? And maybe it's Pilates or bar or yoga or strength or something else. Or maybe it's meditating. Or maybe it's working on a creative project that I'm super excited about. It doesn't really matter as long as it's not creating the same habits. So like my habit would be to wake up and work. That is something that's absolutely not allowed. That's a hard boundary for me because that is a very toxic place that I go. I use work as a distraction to be busy and not to deal with what I really need. And so that's absolutely not on the table, but pretty much anything else is on the table at that point. Ask yourself, what would I do instead? So if you're like, man, I don't want to get up and do X, Y, Z. I know I told myself I would. Okay. So stand up. Right? Because you can't keep negotiating with yourself. So do something, sit up, stand up, whatever. And then ask yourself, what would I do instead? So if I didn't go work out after work, if I didn't cook that meal, if I didn't, whatever it is that you set for yourself, what would I do instead? And is that what I really need right now? The answer could be yes. Like maybe you slept horribly, right? And you got like 2 hours of sleep. And if you skipped whatever that habit was, you could sleep 30 more minutes. And you're like, no, what I really need is sleep. Great, go back to sleep. Right? But is that what you really need? That's probably not every morning. So be honest with yourself. What do I really need right now? And always trust your intuition. Sensations lead this. A lot of people say, oh, I don't know if it's my intuition. I don't know if it's me just sabotaging. I don't know if it's my brain trying to resist change. Like there's all these questions about that. And I will tell you that sensations never lie. Once you get to understand your body, you're going to know the difference between what that sensation is trying to tell you. It's going to feel, I hate to use good and bad because I don't like, judgment, but you're just going to know. If you intended to do one thing and your intuition's asking for something else, follow it. It's going to feel really good. That's how you know. It's going to feel good. Now, I'm not saying push-ups feel good. I get it. They're hard, but it feels good to do them, even though they suck. You know what I mean, right? Failure isn't real. You could always learn about yourself, your habits, your patterns. So if you get to a place where you're feeling like you're not following this, just go back to step one and look at what led you to where you are. That is valuable. Did I cut off? I don't think I cut off. At least it didn't tell me I did. But this is all going to be posted. So if you missed a piece of it, you can go back. So go back to step one. What are my unconscious habits? What am I doing that I'm not realizing? What are my automatic reactions? Like you can always go back to step one and you can always learn. There's no such thing as failure. It's all information. When I was a personal trainer, I would tell my clients, you can't fail if you didn't do the sort of homework that I gave you. There's no failure just because you didn't do it. But you better be willing to have the conversation about the uncomfortable conversation and about why. So what happened the moment that you were about to do the thing and you didn't do it? If you can tell me that information, we can now unpack that, and that's going to be that's even more beneficial than you doing it, right? So there's always information to learn. All right, guys, that's it for today. We went long today. Habits is a big one, though. I'm not going to lie. Figuring out why we do what we do and trying to change our habits. I hate the 21-30 day thing. It's so much more complex than that. Not in a challenging way, but in just understanding humans kind of way. So please don't beat yourself up. But anyways, that's all I have for today. We're going to talk about some more stuff next week. So join me every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Go ahead and give me a follow or share. I also post this stuff on my blog. I post it on my podcast. It's all out there in all different forms. So I'll see you guys next time.